women are starting to recognize that if they want to protect their spaces and opportunities, they have got to get together.
This guilt trip that everybody has around this narrative about these fragile children who they have to be treated like they're little Dalai Lamas.
What, in your opinion, is a woman?
An adult human female.
I mean, the fact that you guys are blurring my face at my request is because if my face got out, chances are I would get doxxed and I would lose my job.
Tamara Ugolini here with Rebel News. I'm at the Canadian Christian College in Whitby, Ontario for an event being hosted by the Democracy Fund. They're a registered charity and friends of ours who are working to uphold democracy, as the name alludes. Now, here in particular, they're hosting an event titled Protecting Women's Spaces in the Age of Transgenderism. The panelists include Amy Ham, Barbara Kay, Kim Jones, Heather Mason, and then finally Jen Smith. Now, I'm here to interview some of the attendees, but also some of the panelists. And first and foremost, the question on everyone's mind is, what is a woman? So let's start there and see what we can find out. What, in your definition, is a woman?
An adult human female. It's pretty easy.
I think we'll get a reoccurring theme here of something like that. What, in your opinion, is a woman?
An adult human female.
An adult human female. And now you can open the pickle jar.
Well, I think my initial response would be an adult female.
That seems to be a reoccurring theme here today.
An adult human female.
I'm hearing that a lot lately.
For me, it's adult female able to bury children.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
That's what I learned from biology. Grade, I don't remember, I was 6 or 7 years old.
An adult human female. Everybody knows what a woman is.
Everyone
pretending to not know. Oh, everybody knows. Everybody knows. They may not have ever had to think about what the actual definition is, but everybody knows what a woman is. When someone wants a baby, they know who to go to. When someone wants to stop reproductive rights or contraceptive rights, they know who they're affecting.
First thing, I'm asking every participant here, what, in your opinion, is a woman?
Well, I mean, feminists have been debating this question for a lot longer than I've been around in this issue. I've always understood a woman to be an adult human female. That's always been my understanding. Now, even feminists will concede that there are sociological aspects to being a woman in terms of the expectations and the roles that you play and stuff. So I recognize that that is part of being a woman. But the problem, I would say, with the transgender community is they accuse a lot of what they call TERFs as being biological essentialists, right? And saying that all that matters is biology. Well, they're kind of on the other side, and they're saying that all that matters is the social aspects and the sociology of being a woman. And it's neither. It's a blending of both. But when it comes down to rights and stuff, and how we're going to legislate and create laws and stuff, I think that physical reality has to take primacy, and that is because we've always, not always, but certainly more enlightened societies have always tried to keep politics secular, and being sort of rooted in biology is being secular, in my opinion.
How do you think women get their voices heard at the transgender table as we see, unprecedented silencing and censorship of any dissidents?
I don't know the answer to that, and I think that is the big question, and I think we need to keep talking about that and figuring it out. And I have some things I need to process from today, and maybe that's one of them, which is how do we unite at the highest level, or unite at the granular level on different topics around this issue, and I don't know the answer, but I think it's an important question.
We have organized a group called Icons Women. It's Icons, the Independent Council on Women's Sport, and the website is iconswomen.com. We are, for the first time, providing a collective voice of female athletes. We have not had a voice at the table making rules and regulations that affect women's sports, and it's time for us to organize to do so. So we've got an unbelievable backing. We have Olympians across multiple sports. We've got legends like Martina Navratilova and Benita Mosley and Nancy Hogshead-Makar, Donna Devrona. These are U.S.-based athletes. But we have joined an international consortium on female sport, which is headed from Canada by your own Linda Blade. And around the world, we've got people in Spain, Australia, Britain, Mexico. The countries are expanding. Women are starting to recognize that if they want to protect their spaces and opportunities, they have got to get together. And with the science, with the lawyers, with the athletes, and with the voices and supporters of all of those that are involved in sport, we are going to get there.
That's a great question. I would love to have an answer to that because, I mean, the fact that you guys are blurring my face at my request is because if my face got out, chances are I would get doxxed and I would lose my job. And I have a feeling that I have lost friendships over people realizing that I know what a woman is and want rights and spaces for women.
A lot of it has to be pushing back in the very way that we just did today, is finding a venue where these women could talk about their particular experiences, have a lot more of it, put it out there. I'm actually seeing a change. I remember on Twitter a couple of years ago, if you said a trans woman is not a woman, you'd be booted off Twitter. But you can say that now. You can say a lot of other things now that you couldn't say on Twitter, and that's because too many people are pushing back and saying the things that they weren't supposed to say. I think the Tavistock closure was a huge, I think it hasn't been recognized yet for the importance that it has. So this independent review that was done in the UK, and it was devastating, the indictment. But all it should be telling us is, hey, the Tavistock, their protocols are exactly what's going on in Canada, and if we don't have an independent review, then something's very wrong. The fact that my own newspaper, the National Post, did an editorial on this and said, yes, we do need a review. It took courage. Like a year ago, I think they would not have had the courage to do it. There's so much fear around this subject. Oh, you say something like this, and here's another trans kid that's going to kill himself, because you're so offended. Your remark was so offensive. This is what's this guilt trip that everybody has around this narrative about these fragile children who they have to be treated like they're little Dalai Lamas. And if you say that, hey, maybe they're not actually transgender and this is just a phase they're going through, once you've parted that veil and you see the machinery inside that's pushing out all this propaganda, then there's only one way to go, and that's, I think the dominoes are going to start falling. Can't fall too quick for me. So I do see a little glimmer of hope on the horizon. We're going to see a lot of this kind of thing, women talking to women and having these panel discussions and
upholding democracy.
Yes.
Well, it's tough because when I did my first push that made it to the Minister of Health's desk, I was aided by the conservative political community to a certain extent, although even that was tough getting support for because nobody really wants to touch this, right? So yeah, I got some support and I managed to get it into the House of Commons, but in the end, when it was the most important for everybody to speak, everybody sort of disappeared and the thing just sort of died and went away. But if we got it there once, we can get it there again, and then what we need is people like yourself and other people who have a voice to start talking about this, but, and this is so critical, talking about it in a gentle, respectful way, okay? Because when people, there's a lot of people who support me, right, and what I'm doing, but then they say all these terrible things about transgender people, right? And I say, well, hello, I'm standing right here, right? So you need to sort of approach it with a compassion and understanding, when we look at these kids, these are damaged, wounded children. And when you are criticizing the transgender community, they're getting a lot of that. We need to have compassion for them, and we need to have compassion for all people and approach it from that perspective.
I find that it's more and more difficult from bathrooms to universities to even talking to politicians, to almost anybody. to find safe space without being attacked for the views as a woman I hold. And today I came here to find out how and where do we find this space, these spaces, how do we preserve these spaces, how do we not give up spaces for which we were fighting for decades.
For decades, exactly. And so how do women get their voices heard? How do their voices be heard at the table without being labeled as a transphobe?
I think as women, first we have to connect together as a large voice and take it from there. Let that voice as one big voice to be heard.
I think that important discussions are often hard ones, but they shouldn't be shied away from. And I think as a society, it's getting increasingly difficult to just have conversations that impact everybody, even if you have a difference of an opinion. So I wanted to come out and listen to the speakers and be better informed about other people's feelings, and also to kind of find a place in how I feel about the way things are going in our society.
I think so much of the Canadian population does not know what legislation has been passed in this country that affects them. I think the majority of the population still doesn't know that any man at any time can enter any women's spaces and no one can say anything. And there is not a corporation or a government body that will uphold women's rights at this point to a sex segregated space. And I don't think most people realize that.
All right, so that's a wrap here at the Canadian Christian College in Whitby, Ontario. Lots of robust discussion around preserving women's spaces and the idea of how self-identifying can inherently cause women to self-exclude and not even partake in certain activities when self-identity and transgenderism infiltrates various sectors of their life. The thing that I felt most compelled to share was how interesting it is that when asked how women get their voices heard in the arena of ideas and have their voices brought to the table on the topic of transgenderism and how it's affecting their security, their privacy, and their safety, women don't know how to go about that. So the consensus was that simply by being here today and having a robust discussion would pave the way to facilitate that conversation. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. National Post columnist Barbara Kay was a co-author of the book Unsporting: How Trans Activism and Science Denial Are Destroying Sport. She teamed up with Canadian track champion Linda Blade to examine the dangers of gender ideology in sports. To get your copy, head over to unsporting.com. It's a read that you don't want to miss. Find out more and order yours today at unsporting.com.